Hello and welcome to the webinar, Small Talk with a Purpose, utilizing the FORD method to get noticed. This webinar is hosted for TESL Ontario members, and please note that the session will be recorded. My name is Althea and I will be your moderator for this evening. Now, before I introduce our guest for this evening, there are a few helpful tips that I'd like to mention. For optimal viewing experience, please use Google Chrome or Firefox as your browser. If you experience problems with your audio or technical issues, you may need to log out and log back in again. To log out, please click on the arrow located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. If that doesn't work, you may need to use the phone-in option to join the webinar. I've pasted it in our chat box, but I'm going to paste it one more time here. There we go. So that if for any reason you cannot hear us or your computer crashes, you can call in and join us over the phone. Everyone is being muted to cut down on background noise. However, we still welcome comments and questions, so therefore please feel free to write down your comments and questions in the chat box, which is located to the right-hand side of your screen, and these will be addressed by Katina during or at the end of the webinar. Without further delay, let me introduce our guest presenter, Katina. Katina Deischel has been teaching in the field of ESL since 2001, where she started as an ESL summer school teacher at the Dufferin-Peel District School Board. Over the past 16 years, Katina has taught ESL, EIP, ELT, and OSLT Canada, China, and Korea. At present, Katina is working as a sessional lecturer in EIP at George Brown College and as a business communication coach at Access Employment. Over the past year, Katina has had the great opportunity to design 3 employment-related programs at Access, resulting in over 440 hours of curriculum design focused on Canadian business culture, the trades industry, youth employment programs, and finance service professionals. At the core, Katina loves being involved in education and is excited to see where new opportunities take her next. So great to have you here with us. How is the sound? Is that sound okay, everyone? Great. Okay, Katina. So great to have you with us. I'm just going to hand over her slides right now. Okay, Katina, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate having you here this evening. Take it away. Okay, let's work on the sound here. Okay, Katina, can you say something?
Althea, this is Jen speaking. Can
Hi,
people
Jen.
hear my voice? You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Katina, if you can hear me, we might have to get you just to log out and then log back in again. just because we're not, and I can see your cam is working fine, but there's actually a little tiny mute symbol on your cam, so I'm not sure what happened there. So just give us a moment, log out, and come back in, and fingers crossed. In the meantime, we can all kind of do some small talk while Katina gets back into the room. Good.
Good. Thank you.
So do you watch Survivor? That's about the only thing I watched lately. No time for anything else.
The Walking Dead.
All right, Stephanie, Walking Dead.
Okay, what are you wearing for Halloween? Okay.
Claudia? Oh, I've got the best costume ever. I'm dressing up as a rubric. Amazing. Wait, who?
I think I'm back in the room.
You are. Excellent. Let's get your camera back on.
Sorry, everyone. Of course, it has to break down right as I'm starting. Can everyone see and hear me? Yes, everyone can hear? Awesome. All right, so I just need to find my name now. Is it alphabetical? Yes. I'm not sure how to take presenter status now that I'm so low. Uh-oh. Althea, do you have any idea how to give me presenter status? Because now I can't take it. Oh, I think I did just take it. Okay, fantastic. Here we go. Oh, crisis averted. So let's everyone get started. So everyone can see and hear me, correct? I hope they were all practicing small talk. Mwahaha. This was my secret to get you chatting. So let's begin. Can I get everyone to please close their eyes for a minute and picture being in a room filled with your peers and potential employers, and the manager of the school you've been dying to work at walks up to you and strikes up a conversation. The first thing you do is, of course, you pitch yourself in your perfectly crafted 30-second elevator pitch. But with that finished, what do you do now? You blank and you see the manager starting to shift her eyes and body away from you. And you see your opportunity quickly disappearing at that interview you've been dying to get. You've got to do something. So you turn to her and you say, "Before coming to this event, my sister told me the silliest pun ever to use if I run out of things to say. I have to share it with you. What did the owner of the fancy French cheese factory say after it exploded? Oh, mon Dieu, the brie is everywhere." Yes, I know. Yuck, yuck, terrible. But I had to share it. Do you have any siblings? And what's the worst advice they've ever given you? And from there, with a little humor and a reference to family, you've hopefully hooked the manager into continuing the conversation with you just a little bit longer so that you can razzle dazzle her with your knowledge about their new conversation program and how you're eager to hear more about it. From there, it's just a few short steps to asking for her business card, sending an email in a few days, and securing an interview. Now, does this happen in every situation? Of course not. However, you sure as heck have a better chance at a fruitful relationship after showing off your soft skill chops than you would have if that conversation had fizzled out right after your elevator pitch, leaving you without a business card and kicking yourself at the missed opportunity. But how do we become masters of small talk, especially when so many of us see it as pointless and meaningless? The answer is simple. We need to stop seeing small talk as wasted time talking about the terrible weather. Oh, it's getting really cold. Us Canadians, we love to complain about it. Or the unreliable transportation in Toronto. Honestly, how many times does my subway need to stop between Bathurst and Kennedy Station because of crew change? And we need to start seeing it as a necessary means to flex our communication muscle. But it also shows so much more. It shows your ability to be engaging, relevant, informative, researched, confident, entertaining, and inclusive. Qualities that all new bosses, every new friend, and every new student needs to see from you before they're really excited to be part of your social or professional team. Hi, everyone. I'm Katina Deischel, and I help people overcome their fear of the dreaded small talk scenario. Sorry, we're just going to find that. To help them develop the skills and resources necessary to effortlessly small talk their way into any new connection, to become a memorable interviewee, to create a great first impression, or to become a schmoozing savant at your next social gathering. And here's how I'm going to do it in 4 simple steps. First, we're going to look at the why. We're going to talk about the top desired soft skills in the Canadian workplace and the importance of utilizing that precious 1 or 2 minutes at the beginning of any social interaction or professional interaction to charm your audience with impactful, engaging, and memorable small talk. Second, we're going to look at the what. What exactly is small talk? The purpose, the general rules, and the best way to maximize small talk in a variety of locations and situations. Third, we'll focus on the how. The how will show you how to move your small talk from the mundane to the extraordinary by using the Ford method of small talk. What is it? Where do I use it? And how do I use it effectively? Last, we'll wrap up the presentation with a look at the fine art of asking good questions to better facilitate any conversation, no matter how big or how small it may be. Once we've accomplished these 4 areas, I'll quickly summarize the key learning points one more time before taking your questions. Please feel free to write your questions down, and during question period, you'll be given time to write out your questions. My hope is to answer most of them. However, if I can't get to all the questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me via email. At the bottom of the handout that you were given, you can find my contact information. Also, at the end of the webinar, I will bring up my email and my LinkedIn address as well, to feel free to connect with me. Finally, one more important thing. Yes, I know that it's a screen separating us, but it doesn't mean that we can't have an interactive workshop. Polls will appear throughout the presentation, and you will be given 30 seconds to a minute to answer with the polling information. Once you're done, we can take a look at what the majority of the group is saying. Now, who's ready to get chatting? Throughout the workshop, there will be a variety of activities for you to complete. If you have the workshop's handout on screen or printed, great. Now it's time for you to take it out because here comes activity number 1. Again, I'm going to get you to close your eyes and picture the last 1 or 2 gatherings you attended where you chatted with a new group of people. In that situation, what were the go-to topics that the others used in those first 1 or 2 minutes of small talk to break the ice? Write down the 3 topics, and when you're finished, please put them in the chat box. I'm going to give you 1 minute to complete the activity, and I'll tell you when the time is up. So please do activity 1 now. Time is ticking. As you're writing, I'm just writing them on a note. Oh, there's some deep ones there. Weather. Family. Hey, everyone, you have about 10 seconds left. Okay, everyone. Time's up. So I'm going to be honest, that was a pretty diverse group of topics, but a couple consistently seem to come up. Weather, transportation, our work, and our family. And so as we go towards the end of today's webinar, I'm going to introduce you to a couple other topics that you should interject in your next small talk exchange. Now that we've looked at some of the common topics, let's take a humorous moment. What are the 4 key small talk archetypes? The first archetype is the playful small talker, those enthusiastic, loud, funny extroverts who thrive in the limelight. They do their best work socializing and can schmooze a crowd in seconds. However, this type also tends to be more disorganized and easily distracted, so some of their innovative, creative, and fast-talking ways may lose steam and quickly fall off track if some early preparation about suitable topics are not crafted beforehand. The second archetype, known as the peaceful small talkers, are those who crave peace and quiet and are more than happy to stand in a big group, taking in the conversation of others while actively listening to every word, but offering none of their own. They're introverted in most social settings. They tend to be very grounded and emotionally stable and work very well on teams. However, in small talk environments, they tend to let the other people do all the heavy lifting, which may come across as them lacking in communication skills or the ability to generate topics of interest for their audience. For this group, getting out of their comfort zone is imperative, so forcing themselves to contribute to small talk, even through nonverbal gestures and well-placed questions, is necessary to get themselves in the game. The third archetype are the powerfuls, those small talkers who powerfully and purposely take control of the conversation. They focus it on their own needs and interests and have a clear goal in mind, with an even clearer plan of attack to achieve their goal. They are great at starting conversations. However, if not careful, they often run the risk of dominating the interaction and turning it into the dreaded monologue that we all hate so much in social settings. For this type, practicing asking relevant questions and active listening are important for a good small talk exchange. The fourth and the final type, known as the precise small talkers, value structure and comply with order and procedure. They are highly organized and methodical in their approach, and they often put hard work and achieving the outcome as the priority to the enjoyment of the interaction. These small talkers do extremely well in highly scripted or routine exchanges. However, if their speaking partner deviates too far from their expected script, they often have a difficult time ad-libbing the rest of the conversation, as winging it is certainly not their strong suit. For this type, relying on follow-up questions and listening attentively to other speakers to piggyback off their ideas is probably their best laid plan. Now that we've looked at the 4 small talk archetypes, most of us will likely fall into one or more of the categories. As my mother affectionately tells anyone and everyone who will listen, I apparently came out talking and haven't stopped talking for 30 some years. So for me, I identify most with the type of playful small talker. However, if I'm not careful, I tend to emphasize my own agenda and interests like the powerfuls and have to be keenly aware of actively listening and engaging with my communication partners. So, just for fun, let's quickly go back over the 4 archetypes. We have the playfuls, enthusiastic, funny, and extroverted. We have the peacefuls, active listeners, and great team players. We have the powerfuls, pardon me, purposeful with a clear plan to reach objective. And we have the precise, structured, organized, and precise. So right now, I'm going to bring up your first poll. You have the option of one of 4. So please let us know which archetype best represents you. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to submit your answer now.
Hi folks, this is Jen. You should be able to see A, B, C, D buttons right across your screen. you can click directly onto the screen to have your results tabulated in Katina's poll.
As a new webinar presenter, these are some things I still don't know. So thank you, Jen. All right, it's almost time's up, everyone. A couple seconds left. Okay, now we're publishing. So it looks like the majority of us are in the playful or the peaceful category. Fantastic. So the rest of the presentation is going to be easy peasy. You're all already good at small talk, or at least asking a bunch of questions. So let's continue from there. Now that we've looked at the types, let's quickly look at the soft skills that are most admired and valued, especially in communication fields like teaching. According to livecareer.com, the top 3 soft skills in demand for today's job market are first, communication, second, organization, and third, teamwork skills, which in my opinion rest heavily on one's ability to effectively communicate in growingly diverse groups of people. Monster.com echoes Live Career in the article, Soft Skills to Help Your Career Hit the Big Time, by listing the top soft skills to advance your career as first, communication, second, teamwork, and third, adaptability. Again, we see communication and teamwork in the top 3. Finally, according to topresume.com, the top 3 skills for the successful employee in the 2017 workplace are first, communication, second, organization, and third, teamwork. As you can see, your ability to effectively communicate with others is the foundation for professional success. And this all starts happening the second you meet that other person during that often dreaded period of small talk. Now, let's move on to activity number 2. Looking at the list of the top 10 soft skills required to get and keep your dream job, I'd like you to take about 30 seconds to circle the skill that you most excel at, as well as the skill you'd like to most improve. If you feel so inclined, I welcome you to add your strength and your weakness to the chat box. For me, I believe my strength is my ability to communicate well with others. However, one of my challenges is my ability to work well in teams, as I tend to prefer working individually and on my own tasks. I've always wondered if this is a syndrome of being the middle child. So now take your 30 seconds and add it to the chat box. So I'm seeing a lot of creativity, teamwork, communication, planning. Okay, everyone, time's up. You're welcome to keep adding to the chat box. Because there are so many of you, you are welcome to scroll up and down to see the response of your peers or to take a look at it as we near the end of the presentation. Before we move on to the what of small talk, I wanted to emphasize that small talk is something that happens all the time, every day, between most people you ever encounter. For me, when I realized the power of small talk, I began actively finding out information about people I was planning to meet, either at networking events or interviews, so that I could incorporate their interests, hobbies, and professional projects into my small talk to show that I was not only interested, but that I had also taken the time to get to know at least a little bit about them. Small talk is extremely effective if well planned at the beginning of interviews to not only demonstrate your confidence and your initiative, but it's also extremely helpful when you're new at work to figure out the org chart, to hear about new programs and opportunities, and to find out who the best person to talk to is when you're in need of this or that. Finally, and most often, whenever you're out at a social or professional event, small talk is an exceptional way to rub elbows with people who can and will prove valuable to you down the road. Yes, I know I'm making small talk sound like a contrived and maniacal chess game. But the reality is that when we meet and talk with people, we all want something out. Sorry, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. Okay, so I just want to make sure that when you speak with people, you always want to make sure that you're trying to get something out of the interaction. Let's maximize it to its full potential. Let's finally move on to the what of small talk, the purpose, the rules, and the different situations where you can maximize small talk to its full potential. First, what's the purpose of small talk? It's easy to dismiss small talk as idle chit chat or superficial or pointless and claim to be only interested in real conversation. But how do we get to that point of having a deeper conversation with somebody in the first place without starting with small talk? Conversation is a ladder, with small talk serving as the first few rungs. You can't leapfrog up the ladder without stepping on those first rungs first. Think about it. How did all your current, most important, non-familial relationships begin? Most likely with a bit of small talk one day. Small talk is the portal through which every person you will ever meet will end life. That's huge when you think about it. Let me say that one more time. Small talk is the portal through which every person you will ever meet will enter your life. You never know who you're going to encounter in class, at a coffee shop, at the gym, at this webinar. They could be your future boss, your future best friend, or your future partner. You simply never know when someone you meet will send your life in a completely new direction. But if you can't initiate these relationships, your circle of contacts and intimates will never expand. Now, let's move on to the rules. Perhaps one of the main reasons why small talk is becoming such a daunting task is because we've completely reversed the way we communicate. From the most intimate of face-to-face to the most detached and distant, either through status updates, likes, or tweets. Sadly, many of us are losing opportunities to practice and develop our skills of small talk at an alarming rate. However, regardless in this shift of communication, the need to be an effective, in-person, in real-time communicator remains a top sought-after skill by employers. So, let's do the rules. Rule number 1, small talk should be between 2 to 5 minutes long. It's called small for a reason. Rule number 2, it should follow a simple method called R, anchor, reveal, encourage. First, you need to anchor the topic in a mutually shared reality that both participants are familiar with and can contribute to. Second, you need to reveal or disclose something about yourself to build trust and familiarity with you and the other person. Third, you should encourage the other person to add to the conversation by asking relevant follow-up questions. Rule number 3, actively listen to the other person by including verbal and nonverbal cues at appropriate places. Add things like, really? What? That's great, to make sure that they know you're actively listening to them. Rule number 4, don't be an oxygen vampire or a chatty Cathy. Share the air. Start a topic, reveal something about yourself, and immediately ask about the other person. Small talk is like a tennis match where the ball needs to bounce back and forth between the courts. Rule number 5, body language. Try to maintain natural eye contact, square posture, and don't fidget with your phone or face or cell phone or etc. Always try to remember about your personal bubble as well. So make sure you have the 3-foot rule. Rule number 6, read the room. If the other person's moving away or turning their shoulders or fidgeting, this is probably a good time to on. Find a brief pause conversation and say something standard like, "It was really great chatting with you today, but I'd better get back to my desk," to signal the end of that interaction. Rule number 7, know that all topics can be appropriate or taboo. The best thing to do is to stay on neutral topics for first meetings until you build rapport, which means avoiding topics about politics, religion, money, sexual identity, sickness, or disease, to name a few, until you know the other speaker a little bit better. And move into these topics slowly, testing the interest level at every step. Rule number 8, a little humor goes a long way. Telling an appropriate joke or a funny story about yourself humanizes you, makes you relatable, and lightens the mood. It's definitely a great way to go if you feel the conversation is falling apart. Now that we know the rules, let's look at how we can strategically and effectively use small talk in 3 common scenarios. The first scenario is when you're headed off on an interview. During an interview, the interviewee is feeling inevitably nervous. Naturally, we don't know what to expect, and it's never comfortable having 2, 4, 6, or sometimes more eyes staring at you, judging your every move. In this situation, I always like to come prepared with a little background information to weave into my small talk. Before every interview I go on, I inquire about the interviewers if the name or names are not evident in the interview email. Once I have this information, I start doing a little LinkedIn digging by looking at their profile or doing a quick Google search. Finding out that somebody was the manager of the program you worked at for years, served on the same committee that you're currently serving on, or gave a speech at a professional conference you attended is great material to build your small talk around. Whenever I head into an interview, I typically introduce myself, and after shaking hands and taking a seat, I like to mention that which we have in common with my interviewer before the interviewing begins. For example, Mary, I was looking through your LinkedIn to get an idea of your professional journey, and I was beyond excited to read that you were the manager of the program I worked at for 4 years. I started as a facilitator of that program 1 year after you left, but many staff members told me how you were pivotal in changing the curriculum. After the interview, I'd love to hear about that process and about your most interesting clients. By basing the small talk on a common experience, I am strategically showing that we have a similar professional trajectory. In addition, by moving the interview from the robotic interviewer-interviewee mode and into a discussion between 2 peers and potentially 2 friends, already situates you as a candidate in the interviewer's mind. The second scenario focuses on attending conferences and professional development seminars and workshops. At these events, the keynote speaker or guest speakers are announced well in advance. Again, collect some information about the keynote speaker or the history of the event and interject it into the conversation with whomever you have. For example, if speaking with a TESL Toronto exec at their yearly TOSCON conference, you can say, "I'm really impressed with how incredibly organized TOSCON is, especially with 40 presenters, 15 rotating rooms, and food to organize throughout this busy day. I can't believe such a dedicated team of volunteers have been running this chapter since 1984. How do you find the time to organize this on top of work and family?" Be generous but genuine in your compliments. The third scenario relates to any social gathering. In these situations, I always like to show my weakness. What? What exactly are you talking about? Well, if you're able to show your flaws, people tend to be more willing to share their own. Recently, I was at an event teaching people how to incorporate technology, specifically the smartboard, into their classroom. During our first break, I approached a group, and after listening to how they effectively incorporated the smartboard into their classes, I followed the compliment them, expose your flaw, and ask for advice method. At a break in the conversation, I said, "Ladies, I'm extremely impressed with all of you for rocking out the smartboard in your class. I have to admit something embarrassing. During my interview at Made Up College, while giving my mock lesson, I confidently started circling all over the board, only to realize that not only was I using the incorrect pen, I had also accidentally picked up an indelible marker and left my permanent mark all over their new expensive smartboard. I'd love some of your tips and advice. How did you learn to use the smartboard in your class so effectively?" The reality is, people generally love talking about what they do best. And the group was more than happy to give me advice, and I was more than happy to listen first, take a business card second, and extend my network to include 3 college contacts third. It looks like we've finally reached the Ford method. Sorry, things are shutting. There we are. It looks like we've finally reached the Ford method, a surefire approach to not only get the person talking, but to have them excited to talk to you. Hopefully, some of you were able to review the Ford method video by Practical Psychology before today's webinar. As it's over 7 minutes long, I'll let you watch the video after the webinar when you have time. For your reference, if you take a look on the handout, you will be able to see the link to the video under Activity 3. Simply put, the Ford method focuses on talking about 4 areas in this specific order: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. The key to using this method is to remember the R formula in tandem. For example, when starting to talk about family, you should always start by A, anchoring the conversation in the topic of family; R, revealing something about you and your family; E, encouraging the other person to reveal something about their family or asking a relevant and suitable question. What might this look like? Imagine that you're at your next meeting and you're waiting for it to start. You turn to your coworker and say, "I was just talking to my sister who lives in England before I came to work today, and I'm so jealous because she's off on vacation again to Egypt this weekend. I guess it's easy to travel when you live in Europe. Do you have any siblings who are travel addicts?" From this introduction, the topic of family was anchored. I revealed something about myself, such as my sister who lives in England and who gets to travel a lot, and I encouraged my partner to talk about any variety of topics, including siblings, travel, or upcoming vacations. The key to this discussion is that every time you add something to the conversation, it must be structured in the ARE format. Therefore, when moving on to occupation, once again, you must anchor the topic in work, reveal something about yourself, and encourage your partner to do the same. For example, it's nice that our siblings get to travel so much. Unfortunately for us Canadians, everything is so far away, and we only usually get 2 or 3 weeks vacation when we start out. However, I'm really loving working in this new program at No Name College as their instructor, so I'm not dying to get away just yet. How long have you been working here, and what's your favorite part of the program? This process continues through to recreation, where you, once again, anchor, reveal some of your own hobbies and interests, and encourage your partner to do the same. Finally, you reach the end point, dreams. The dreams section is an interesting area because it can lead to some very important conversations and connections. About a year ago, I was at an employment event where I was serving as keynote speakers. At the event, a TESL member approached me and asked me about my history in the field, to which we went through a small talk of occupation, recreation, and dreams. At the dreams portion, I said, although I love teaching, and it's definitely one of my main passions, my ultimate dream is to create an employment program for new Canadians to help them not only find their dream job, but to keep their dream job. What are you hoping to do in your field in the next 5 or 10 years? From this conversation, I learned that member was interested in moving from the private academy world into a link or settlement program. And because I knew a few people in the industry, I was able to direct her to a real contact who could either provide advice or potentially offer an interview in the future. Now, how and where should we use the Ford method? Truthfully, it can be used anywhere and with anyone. We all have family, we all have jobs or had jobs, we all have hobbies, and we certainly all have dreams. Dreams in the professional sense. I can't really see a lot of what's going on in the chat box, but if you have an opportunity to go back and listen again, I wasn't being invasive with my question. I was actually speaking about dreams in the occupation, after occupation. Just remember that the Ford method requires an active passing back and forth of the topic between the participants in the conversation. Don't hog all the air by talking solely about yourself, and don't ask question upon question or run the risk of sounding like an interrogator. Your job is to A, anchor, R, reveal, and E, encourage at every point in the conversation. Before heading into our last part about open questions, let's do another activity. I think I've lost it. There it is. We are currently on activity number 3. I'd like you to start with the topic family. Imagine that this webinar is in real time and the participants, you, are sitting in an auditorium with each other. There is a 10-minute window before the seminar begins, and instead of scrolling through your Facebook reel, you decide to use the time to practice your Ford method. You turn to the person beside you and you strike up a conversation. What might this conversation look like? Remember to ARE the conversation with the topic family. Take this time now to craft your opening introduction to your neighbor. Remember, it shouldn't be long, just a few sentences. Once you're done, please feel free to put it in the chat box, and we can definitely review them later at the end of the webinar. Please start your 2 minutes now. I've shut the sound down so that you can work on activity 3. I'm definitely seeing a lot of great choices. So just to remind you, we're focusing on family and trying to anchor, reveal, and encourage. Okay, you have about 30 seconds left if you want to add your answer to the chat box. Just as we're wrapping up, I see a lot of great submissions. I do really want to focus on the last E, encourage. You always want to wrap up the section with a question to allow the other person to contribute their own experience or ideas to the interaction. All right, ding, ding, ding. Time's up, everyone. Let's continue. How's everyone doing so far? I really debated doing this poll, but I thought it would be a little bit amusing. I'm going to bring up our second poll, and the question is, how do you feel about the webinar so far? Do you feel A, confident? I understand the strategies and will use them successfully soon. B, confused. What exactly is Katina talking about? Or C, extremely hungry. I need to get something to eat soon. When will she finish talking? So you can see, oh, I'm hoping that there's more A than anything else. You have about 30 seconds. A, confident. B, confused. C, hungry. 10 seconds left, everyone. So you want to submit your answer in the poll. 2 seconds. And published. Phew, it looks like most of you chose A, confident. I don't know what I would have done if that had not been the answer. So thank you for making this easy for me. Now that we've finished through our polls, let's move on to the last part, questions. A few weeks ago, I asked my students to create 2 questions per group where they could ask me anything, either as a person, a Canadian, or a teacher. One of my groups asked me a question I really wasn't expecting in my level 5 class, equivalent CLB 5. They asked, after having a really embarrassing moment in class, what do you do? I was taken aback. This question went so far beyond me telling an embarrassing story, and it moved into strategies and methods to overcome shame when embarrassing moments inevitably happen. Needless to say, my answer turned into a frank and open discussion and brainstorm session about strengths, weaknesses, feelings, hurdles, expectations, realities, and strategies. All of my students started sharing their own feelings of embarrassment through their English language journey, and other students chimed in with supportive statements and helpful comments. A good question can reinvigorate any environment and, if used correctly, has the potential to turn the forgettable into something truly memorable. Thus, to be able to use the Ford and R methods properly, we must learn how to ask good questions. But what makes a good question? Questions with more than one answer are good questions. Therefore, learning to incorporate a variety of open-ended questions into your small talk situation will result in a more fruitful outcome. All good questions have 5 qualities. First, they should be purposeful. It should invite participation, direct discovery, or challenge the topic. Second, it should be open but with parameters or direction. Instead of asking, well, what's your dream? Set the parameter of time or location. What's your goal in EAP for the next 1 or 2 years? Third, it guides the responder, but without forcing a specific answer. You are not leading them to make some prescribed response. Rather, you may want the speaker to focus on one specific area, but encourage them to respond organically. Fourth, your question should try and encourage higher thinking by facilitating critical thinking. Finally, a good question empowers your audience to explore, discover, process, organize, postulate, and conclude. Allow your participants to go beyond stating mere facts to meaningful understanding and application. Some question starters that you might incorporate into your next small talk may include, what would happen if? How could blank be used to? Why is blank important to or for? What are the implications of? How does blank affect? What is the best blank and why? What are the strengths and weaknesses of? What is the best solution to the problem of? What do you think causes, and what is another way to look at? Before we wrap up this section on questions, we have one last activity. Please locate activity 4 on your handout. Activity 4 requires you to create 2 questions that you would like to ask me, either about the seminar or about my history in the field. Once you have written your 2 questions, please put them in the chat box, and I will address them right after summarizing the workshop's key points. You have 2 minutes to add your questions to the chat box. So I'm going to go silent right now so that you can add your 2 questions to the chat box now. So just in case anyone needs me to repeat, we are doing activity number 4. Activity number 4 requires you to ask 2 questions that we will address at the end of the webinar. You can either ask about the webinar, the topic, small talk, or you can ask about me and my history in the field. I think I'm going to be making Althea and anyone else that is helping her moderate do a lot of heavy lifting, trying to collect a lot of questions. Althea, thank you so much in advance. So you have about 30 seconds. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best to answer a lot of these questions, but if I'm not able to answer all of them, you're welcome to email me or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can definitely have a discussion. So thank you for the questions that you've added, and I'll do my best to get back to them in about a minute. To conclude, let me quickly summarize the key takeaways from today's seminar. First, small talk is an essential feature for all new relationships, social and professional. And with a greater emphasis on communication in the professional world, building your small talk skills will help you make connections, get important information, become memorable in interviews, and build your social circle. Second, small talk can be used effectively in a variety of situations, such as networking events, interviews, and social gatherings, so long as the small talker does a little background research and incorporates a variety of topics that are mutually shared or experienced. Your objective in these situations is to make the other person feel as though they know you, are similar to you, and are eager to get to know you and be around you. Third, using the Ford method of discussing family, occupation, recreation, and dreams is an excellent way to keep your other partner talking. However, you must do so in the ARE method by anchoring each topic, revealing something about yourself, and encouraging the other person through questions. Fourth, stimulating a great conversation requires a few well-placed questions. Practice incorporating a variety of related, stimulating, and thoughtful open-ended questions to encourage your partner to contribute sharing in the small talk exchange. As more and more of our modes of communication are moving farther and farther away from that which happens in real time, it is important to continue capitalizing on opportunities to practice and develop your small talk skills. Use every social and professional interaction as great training ground for becoming a small talk savant, and watch how these skills elevate your social and professional relationships. All right, everyone, we've survived the hour together. I hope you all leave today feeling extremely confident in your small talk ability. And I now open up the floor to questions. At this moment, I'm going to ask for you to hold any new questions. I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to start going through as many questions as I can for the next couple of minutes. All right. So if everyone can hold on their questions right now and not add any more to the chat box. Sorry, it's just a lot to go through. Okay, let's take a look. So Magda asks, would you give up the small talk if the stranger ignores you or by not answering your question? So so unfortunately the box is going to continue scrolling. So Althea, if you have a good suggestion, aside from people not adding to the chat box, I'm all ears. So Magda, if somebody is giving me signals that they're not interested in continuing the conversation, I did mention that you want to find a moment and to excuse yourself. So always saying something like, oh, it was really great chatting with you, but I have to catch the bus has worked for me in countless situations, or great chatting with you, but I got to get back to my desk. I always use these if I kind of want to get out of the conversation, especially if the other person looks unimpressed. Another question that I heard was a couple of people asked about how I started, I guess, in business English or started at Access. So I was teaching and living abroad for about 5 years. And when I returned back to Canada, I really had two skills. I could teach business English and I could teach English. And so I started applying everywhere. And I did end up getting a job at Access about 5 years ago doing their Language for Workplace Connections program. And the reason why I got into it is because I also come from a background where my parents are immigrants and they struggled a lot when they first came to Canada. There were no wonderful programs like YMCA has or Access or Costi. And I truly believe in the value and the need for these programs. So aside from my history, it was also my passion and my commitment to helping new Canadians learn how to find a job and keep a job. Another question, do I start each class with small talk? Sure. Usually my small talk has some kind of theme. So for example, this Tuesday, I'll probably start with Halloween, fears and nightmares. Another day I might do travel or culture. And I do always create a couple of questions. It's usually not random, especially in my ESL classes. I usually like to try to incorporate some vocabulary that we've been using, but having some sort of theme is a great way to get the students talking. What is the best way to start a conversation? I don't know, I talk a lot. So I'm not really shy to go up to random people and to start asking a bunch of questions, or to just start talking about whatever. The best way, I think, is to try the Ford method. You don't ask people directly about their family. You can always use your environment. As I mentioned about my sister who travels a lot, we all kind of travel or have siblings who travel or interested in travel. So it's definitely a good way to get them chatting about family or their own interest in traveling. Another question that I read was, again, what has happened if somebody seems irritated? Read the room. So if you find that the person is fidgeting or they're giving you one-word answers, it's time to end that conversation. So take the moment to end it and just leave the conversation. Has small talk ever backfired? Sure, I'm sure it has on many occasions. It's not a surefire method, but you know what? It's actually worked in more cases than not. It's definitely got a lot more people chatting who otherwise probably wouldn't. And I do a lot with the ARE method where I'll reveal something about myself and then ask a follow-up question, even something like, and how about you? Or what do you think about that? It does work quite well to get the other person to even contribute something small. Okay, so let's go back up and see some other questions. Mm-hmm. How should you respond if someone asks you a question during small talk that you don't feel comfortable answering? I would probably just say that that's a great question, and that I would definitely be interested in answering that question privately, and that they're welcome to email me. So Sheila Baker asks, how have you contributed to the ESL field? We recently had our AGM, so I'm part of the TESL Toronto Executive. The AGM just passed on Wednesday, and I do contribute to many of their events. So I've spoken at some of their employment events, and we do create a lot of workshops and conferences throughout the year for our TESL Toronto members. It seems like somebody has a question. Asma, I'm trying to find Asma.
I'm trying to find it as well to help you, but I can't see it. So Asma, could you add that back into the chat box, please?
Okay, so Julietta asked, how do I engage my students in small talk? Every time I start a new class, I do kind of a round robin. So I get them to sit in pairs, facing each other in an interview scenario, and I just put a random general topic: food, travel, sports, family, media, cell phone, anything that would just be something easy for them to talk about, and I give them a 2-minute window. And this has worked with CLB level 2 all the way up to CLB 10. After the 2 minutes, the inside circle has to move one to the right, the outside circle has to move one to the right. So over the course of 45 minutes or an hour, if you have a class of 20 or 25 people, they end up talking about different topics with different people for short amount of time. And I find that that's less scary than having an open discussion, especially on the first day where students are tentative to speak in the group. So in this format, yeah, I found it that it's the most successful way to not only get them to introduce themselves to each other, but to start feeling comfortable talking to each other and talking about a variety of activities. Oh no, I still can't find it. Oh, I found it. How do you engage in small talk when everyone around you is glued to their phone? Asma, how old are your students? I think that that's an interesting question. So I primarily work with adult students. Most of them at Access are 35 and older, and their key focus is to find a job. And because they have that motivation, they don't use their phone in my class. And I make a rule at the beginning that if they have to use their phone, they're welcome to leave the class and take a call if necessary. Or if they need to use it for a dictionary, then they can do that as well in the class. With my college students or university students, truthfully, I haven't had that problem a lot either. And I think it's because I'm really weird and quirky. So I will sing if I see that they're using their phone, or like I'll get them to read out what they're looking at on their phone to the group or something silly. And so people stop using their phone in class because they don't want to read out their messages to the rest of the group.
Well, Katina, we're just about at the 8 o'clock our end time. This has been really good, really informative for all of us, but I want to respect everybody's time. I wonder if I could get the presenter icon back. Are you finished, or
Sure,
you want to wrap
sure.
up?
Okay, so I'll pass it back to you. Hopefully I can do that. I think the problem is because I came in so late, I don't know how to switch it back to you.
Okay, I'm going to try one more time. Just wanted to, okay, I think everything's good. Thank
Okay,
you so
thank you
much.
so much, everyone. Please feel free to contact me by email or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you so much, Katina. I really appreciate that wonderful webinar presentation. This has been fantastic. Thank you again, Katina. We so appreciate you taking the time on behalf of TESL Ontario and the webinar team. We really appreciate you presenting tonight. We have the upcoming webinars. We have one next Sunday, a technology webinar using Google Drive to foster independent learning. And then we have another one on Wednesday, November 22nd, where the time change is 8 p.m. And so these are not to be missed. So I just want to make sure that you are all aware of these upcoming webinars, and also your PD certificates will be forwarded to you within the week. So thanks again, Katina. This has been fantastic. Thank you everyone for your participation here tonight with us. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody's reminding us to not forget to change our clocks. Back next week. Happy Halloween to everyone. And thank you all for being here with us. And we have Katina, if you want to say anything else, your contact information again. It's going to be on this webinar, of course, is being recorded, and everybody will have access to it within 48 hours. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.